All right, so we have the we implemented the on the client side, being able to find whether the user is there by username. Does that username is already taken? And if that username is not taken, then we want to register the user, create the user, right? So notice that the register of the user still implemented in the on the client side, right? Pushing the user into the array, into the local array that we have here on the client side, right? But that's not good, right? We want to move that over to the server. Right? So how do we do that? So what we want to do here is that instead of having this logic here on the client, we'll move it over to the server. So to do that, we're going to create a URL, same thing, var URL, /API, followed by the entity object, the object that we're trying to manipulate. In this case, it's a user object, plus the data that we want to use to create that user. And that user object is here, right? The user object containing the username, the password are right there. We're not going to do this here on the client side. Instead, we're going to delegate that onto the server. So to do this, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a return $HTTP. Now in this case, we're not going to do a get. Okay, following the RESTful API conventions, right? We use get to retrieve, to read from the server, to create new instances of objects, right? By convention, we use the post, right? Post, like the name suggests, it allows us to post data to the server, send data over to the server. Okay, that's what it's meant for. We give it the URL of where the data should be posted, who on the server side is waiting for this data for, comma, and now we pass in the actual data. Now this data is going to be encoded, right, as part of the HTTP body. Right, the body, the HTTP request has several parts. Right, it has a header, it has a body. The header has a whole bunch of things. Right, has various headers. Right, it could have cookies. So it's just got a lot of parts. Right, the user object, the JSON object here, is going to be encoded as part of the body of the HTTP request. So it's going to go out there to the server. So if we refresh this, if we restart, and we try to register PO and register, it comes in here. It's going to go in that second if statement, that first if statement. If we go in there, notice that it's going to generate that post, right? If we go to a network and we say continue, let's clear the network history. Go to source, we say continue. Right? Notice that it gives us some errors. Right? It's giving us some errors. It's saying the post /API/user is not found on the server. You might say, wait a minute, I remember explicitly creating a handler, an HTTP handler for /API/user. Indeed, we did, didn't we? If we go back to the server, there it is, right? See, there it is, /API/user. See that? But it's a get. This is waiting for an incoming get. Here we're sending an outgoing post. So we need to be able to answer to that post. We need to be able to listen for an incoming post with the same URL. Okay? And the way the server distinguishes between them is that it knows that this is a get and this is going to be a post. Okay? That's the way it distinguishes. And just to keep it straight in my head, I'm going to use the same names here for the functions. Right? And then I'm going to implement it in a function of the same name. There it is. Request response. Yes? Okay. Notice that for every one of these functions on the client, we have a similar function on the server. Right? These two, the user service client and this side of the server, right, are playing the role of kind of like interfaces between two worlds. Okay. This side, the user service client, is an interface between an object-oriented world in the JavaScript running on the browser and the HTTP world, okay, which is a world of streams, right, of streaming data over a network. Yes. two completely different worlds, right? The object-oriented JavaScript world of objects with attributes and whatnot, yes, with arrays and collections, and then the world of the HTTP, which is streaming bits of zeros and ones back to the server, yes. So this is the layer between those two worlds. Here's where the object world ends, right, and the HTTP world begins, right? So these are the two interfaces. And on the other side, it's kind of the inverse. Okay. Again, it's an interface between two worlds: the world of the incoming streams of data coming through the HTTP connection, yes, and then converting those streams of bits and zeros and ones back into an object. Okay. In this case, it's a map, it's a username, it's a password, and whatnot, and then we're using it to filter out some objects in some array. Yes. So these are our two interfaces, right? That in between they share the HTTP protocol, right? But on either end, there's objects, JavaScript objects. There's JavaScript objects on the browser, gets converted into HTTP request, goes to the server, then gets converted again into objects, right? Does some work, it sends back JSON objects, gets streamed back in zeros and bits of ones and zeros back to the client, and the client reconstitutes them back into objects. Yes. Right, so these are two sides of the same coin, right? Of this HTTP coin. All right, so here's register user. So register user needs to get back the user object that is being sent over the wire, right? It's being sent as a JSON object, and as I said earlier, right, it's encoded in the body of the HTTP request, right? So here we need to retrieve it from the body. And the request object, remember, this first argument represents everything that comes from the client, including the body, right? So we could use the attribute body on the request to retrieve whatever was put in that body. Okay, so the body is an attribute that includes whatever was included in the HTTP body, and we're going to store it in a local variable called user. Hopefully, it's going to be the same user object that was sent from the browser, right? We're going to be able to reconstitute it on the server, right, from the body. Now, the body, it just contains ASCII, right, just text, right? So as far as the server is concerned, it has no idea how it should interpret that body. As far as it could be a Word document that is being uploaded or some image that is being uploaded. It could be an Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't know, right? It could be any of many things that is coming from the browser. Yes, the browser could send many different things. In this particular case, it's JSON. Okay, it's just an ASCII piece of text that should be interpreted as JSON. Yes, right? Let's echo it back. Let's send it back in the response. Send back the JSON user. Let's see if that works. Let's restart the server. Let's refresh. Let's go back to the register page. And let's send the user po register. And let's see. Okay, there it is. We're going to send it over. Let's look at the network. And there's our pending. Let's see. Wait a minute. User. I think it's this post. There's our post. Notice what went out. Says that it's application JSON. There it is. See that? It was encoded correctly by the browser. The browser knows that this is JSON data that we're sending over. And on the response, it doesn't seem that the response sent back the correct. Okay, it doesn't look like it was able to retrieve it from the body. Let's see. If we look back at the server, we are using body parser. Why is it not encoding it? Right. So we installed body parser. Because the server all by itself doesn't know how to parse JSON from the body. Out of the box, Express doesn't know how to parse, because again, the body can contain any number of things, right? It can contain images, documents, right? JSON, right? just plain old text. So body parser allows, and configure the body parser allows Express to know how to parse JSON from the body. And it's installed. I'm not sure why it's not encoding it correctly. Looks like when it was sent over, it was encoded as application JSON, but I don't see that the actual JSON object here being generated for some reason. Probably we'll need to force the encoding. Maybe we'll need to enforce the encoding. Let's see. Angular, I believe you can override the encoding. Angular HTTP JSON encoding. Let's see. Okay. JSON, blah, blah, blah. Stringify. HTTP, no. I think there's a, let's say HTTP provider, maybe? Provider? HTTP provider. Value, defaults, headers, posts. Let's see. I think it's something like HTTP provider, post, JSON. Set default, yada yada yada. Let's see, default comment. JSON, except, ooh, this looks promising. There it is. Let's use this. Okay, what I'm trying to do is force it to use a particular content type when it encodes, when it uses post to encode application JSON. So let's see, let's do that, and we're going to do that in the configuration. So if we go to config. Might be the version of the Angular that I'm using, probably. Let's see, we go to config, and we go to HTTP provider, is it? HTTP provider, yep. And provider, JavaScript, content type. No, this is what I want. Why is it copying the wrong line? Oh, okay, there we go. Post. Let me try that again. Let's restart. Let's go back. Refresh. Okay, po, register. Okay, let's see. All right, did it console, possibly network, user, post. Still, All right, let's take a short break and let me fix this and then we'll come back.